As I near completion in the restoration of this miniature Cannondale for my grandson, and before I change the chain, I thought we take an opportunity to talk about the difference between a one-by, a fixie, and a single speed. And here's the opportunity. This is a great little Cannondale with some internal routing. Has a single front chainring, but is it a 1X or what we call one-by? No, it's not. One-bys are on more modern, usually adult frames, and they have a single chainring, but they have either 9 to 12 speed in the back with a rear derailleur. Could this be a fixie? That is, when we turn the crank, is it directly connected to the rear hub with no ratchet system? In other words, no free hub or freewheel. In that case, when we turn the crank, we'll turn the wheel. When we stop turning the crank, the wheel will come to a halt. Why would somebody want this? Well, you're going to find it on track bikes and bike messengers bicycles because the very efficient transfer of force from the pedals directly to the wheel. And it also eliminates the use of any front or rear derailleur, making the bike lighter. On this bike, when we turn the crank and stop, the wheel continues to spin. So it's not a fixie, rather it's a single speed and has a ratchet or freewheel mechanism that allows for coasting. Thus the presence of a nice internally routed linear brake on this single speed. Before we proceed further, I just want to answer one question. Why does this chain stay on the chain ring and not bounce off? On our 1-by or 1X, we usually will have either something to hold the chain in place or a narrow wide chainring that is alternating thin and thicker teeth on the chainring to keep the chain in place and fit into the chain. That is not the case here longer. The answer probably is the fact that there is no rear derailleur to allow the chain to go slack and bounce off. And we can see as we depress or pull up on the chain, there is very little movement and not enough to allow that chain to come off the chainring if we try to pull it. That's probably why it stays on. Let's go ahead and swap out this rusty chain for a new one. When replacing a single speed or fixie chain, double check that the size that you're buying will fit on the present bicycle. The chains come in either 1/8 or slightly narrower 3/32. One note, if you're in doubt, use 1/8. 1/8 will fit both of these and work very well. If you want to go ahead and measure it to duplicate the size, you'll need some calipers. You'll need to find inner links and measure the distance from one side of the roller to the other. And it should come out, I don't know if we can read this on here, but 1/8 of an inch is the roller width, and we'll replace it with 1/8. Again, when in doubt, 1/8 will fit on a 3/32 also. In order to remove the chain, I need to create some slack, and the only way I can do that on a single speed or fixie is to loosen the bolts that hold the wheel in place, allow the wheel to slide forward. To do that, on this particular bike, we need to loosen the bolt which is attached to a safety bar that prevents the wheel from sliding out of position. Present on this kid's bike, probably not present on most single speeds and fixies. We'll mark it with a indelible marker so we get an idea of where the position is and where we need to return it. By the way, the marker easily comes off with alcohol. We'll go ahead and loosen the safety to allow it to move. There we go. Now I can take some box wrenches. This case requires 15mm box wrenches. Put one on one side and one on the other. Turn them both counterclockwise till the bolts are loose, and we can slide the wheel forward. This creates plenty of slack, and we'll go ahead and replace the chain. Chain replacement now is pretty straightforward, similar to any other bicycle. If you want a detailed explanation, view our video in the upper right. Let's go through this rather rapidly and change the chain. This is our master link. It's a snap-on link. There's nothing in the instructions that say it's directional, so it's not a problem in how we put this on. But we're going to put this on the inside pointing out so we can snap on the plate. We use a drop of light lubricant on each of the pins. Go ahead and attach this. Now one should be able to just snap this on. Sometimes a little harder than other times. So we're going to use a pair of long nose pliers and see if we can snap this together. There we go. And then we're going to remove the hanger. I'm going to work this side to side, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Now we're ready to return the wheel to its normal position. Now we'll pull the wheel back, make sure it's straight within the stays. We also can use, in this case, our linear brakes to make sure it's centered. Let's tighten it just slightly on both sides. We want the chain to be fairly taut, but not completely tight. If it doesn't have any flex, or very little, we're going to hear a lot of noise as the chain binds as it goes around. If the flex is more than about ½ an inch or so, the chain could come off. Now here we get, it looks pretty good. We'll pull back just a little bit more. Listen just a little bit. That looks pretty good. Let's tighten up each side. We'll go back and make sure that's firm. The nuts are firm on here. The give is, again, maybe ½ an inch, maybe just a little bit more, but the chain is not going to come off. If we try pulling it, it's not going to come off the front cog. So we can go ahead and tighten up these bolts. Let's make sure first the wheel is aligned between the stays and between the brakes. Looks good. We'll tighten it up. And we'll tighten that safety on the other side that we loosened to begin with. Then we'll check the brakes. Okay, let's turn the crank and give the wheel a spin. I don't hear any rubbing. The wheel seems to be turning freely. Looking from another angle, the rim seems to be clearing the brake pads, and the brakes seem to be working perfectly. If you're getting a lot of rubbing with the brakes, double check that the wheel is centered between chain stays. If it's not well centered, you may need to loosen the bolts and the safety recenter and tighten. If you're getting a little bit of rubbing, there are ways to make minor adjustments with the linear brakes. And that's these little screws right down here on either side. They control the tension and spring on the arm of the brakes. If you tighten, just turn clockwise, the little set screw here, it'll tighten the spring and pull the brake pad away from this rim and the other side towards the rim. If we loosen, it'll move the other way. That is, the brake pad will move towards this rim and the other will move slightly away. You can also work with the other side, so you can tighten one just a tad, loosen the side just a very little bit, check it, and by working back and forth with these particular adjustment screws, you can perfectly align the linear brake. If you have any questions or additions, please put them in the comments below. Subscribe to keep up with our latest videos. This is Tony of Tony 10 Speed. Safe cycling.